Welcome to the Policy Insights Forum and our Strategic Perspective series. Today's event is entitled The Ongoing Military Situation in Ukraine. Our special guest today is Colonel Viktor Somoraka, Defense Attaché of the Embassy of Ukraine to Canada. Our event moderator today is Dr. Paul Taillon, Vice Chair of the Policy Insights Forum and Academic Advisor at Samuel Associates. I'm Goran Pesic, Chair of the Policy Insights Forum and President and CEO of Samuel Associates. The Policy Insights Forum is a nonpartisan research division of Samuel Associates. The forum helps improve policy and decision-making through independent research, analysis, and engagement. Samuel Associates is a trusted advisor to many influential businesses and leaders. We work with clients in the aerospace, defense, national security, and cyberspace industries, providing market advisory services and government relations advice. Today's event will explore the following recent events along the Ukrainian-Russian border, where large-scale Russian exercises took place. This session will focus on some of the observations and implications of the large-scale Russian activity. We hope you'll enjoy the session and encourage you to participate. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge industry and association executives, government officials from Canada, the United States, NATO members in Europe, and foreign government representatives, as well as Canadian government departments and agencies who are in the audience today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the forum. I now invite Dr. Paul Taillon to take the floor as our moderator of this event. Dr. Taillon.
Thank you, Goran. Good morning. My name is Paul Taillon, and I am the Academic Advisor to Samuel Associates and the host of the Policy Insight Forum. The topic for today is the ongoing military situation in Ukraine. To discuss this important topic, focusing on recent events in the Ukraine, our guest speaker is Colonel Viktor Somoraka. Colonel Viktor Somoraka joined the Ukrainian Armed Forces in 1996 and attended the Kyiv Land Forces Military School. From 2000 to 2003, he was an officer in the Ukrainian Navy. Subsequently, he became a liaison officer for the Ukrainian National Contingent in the United Nations in Freetown, Sierra Leone. He attended the National Defense University of Ukraine from 2005 to 2007 and was subsequently appointed a staff officer, Joint Operational Command, Ukrainian Armed Forces from 2007 to 2009. In 2009 to 2012, he was selected to become a staff officer for the Special Operations Directorate, General Staff, Ukrainian Armed Forces. And from 2012 to 2014, he was assigned as a military analyst with the Joint Mission Analysis Cell for MONUSCO headquarters in Kinshasa, the Democratic Republic of Congo. He returned as a staff officer to Special Operations Command, Ukrainian Armed Forces from 2014 to 2016. And was subsequently appointed military attaché to Canada, and since 2017 is a defense, naval, and air attaché of Ukraine to Canada. I would ask Colonel Somoraka to take the floor to provide an overview of recent events in the Ukraine. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm honored to participate in this event of Policy Insight Forum, and as a defense attaché of Ukraine to Canada, I'm honored to share with you some information, assessments, and knowledge of Ukraine, taking into consideration recent events at the Ukrainian border. So let me start with my presentation. Let me start from the very beginning. So, first of all, good morning for everybody here in Northern America, and probably good afternoon for those who are in Europe. Hope you are fine and vaccinated. That's a very challenging time we live in, and for our country, it's even more important to be safe because we have very, very tough situation at our border. I'm sure that we have a very well-informed audience here, so the purpose of this presentation is to organize your thoughts, share with you our assessments, what is going on, and disclose something new. I'm going to deliver my presentation according to this agenda. Military build-up, propaganda, good international response, and some additional thoughts, reflections, and ideas. Definitely, you've seen news, and your attention is focused on the development of station in our country and on its eastern border. So let's say mid-April, Russia has boosted its troop presence near the conflict zone in our country. Was it an unexpected action? I would say no. We have been tracking the general trend since January 2021, both in shelling statistics, in our casualties, and in the Russian troop presence at the border. But let's say within 3 or 4 weeks, Russia successfully doubled its military presence at the border posture, and their general exercise was at the level of 2 armies and 3 VDV divisions, airborne units. And I have to underline that's in pandemic time. So please have a look at the picture on a slide. 50 battalion tactical groups and total 106 troops on the border, only at the border, because this exercise was high-scaled training. According to Defense Minister of Russia, Mr. Shoigu, General Shoigu, the total strength of the exercise throughout all Russia was approximately 300,000 troops, and these troops has conducted 4,000 different military trainings. So taking into consideration the total strength of Russian armed forces, 1,013,628 bucks, 29% of Russian armed forces has been participating in big exercise. So let's say every third soldier officer. General exercise was bigger than this. 35,000 tanks, BTRs, trucks, infantry fighting vehicles, and for instance, 180 combat and support ships, 900 aircrafts of different size. So let's say that was throughout all the Russia. And as of April 26, you see the total amount of the troops and assets at the border with Ukraine. That's quite impressive. And I have to repeat, that's in pandemic time. Quite impressive, taking into consideration NATO activities like Defender Europe exercise this summer. So this deployment of the troops to our border was verified by our own intelligence and our friends and allies intelligence services. We are thankful for Five Eyes partners who are working with us as well. And we saw tons of evidences from social media and different open sources. So deployment was huge, and the distances covered by Russian troops and equipment quite impressive. For instance, deployment has been conducted from north of Russia, from Far East, from Siberia, Caucasus as well. The distances covered by troops approximately 3,500 kilometers. In one specific case you see on the slide, we were able to track the movement of a specific unit from Kemerovo, that's Kuzbas, Siberia, to the border with Ukraine. Thanks to the railway cars tracking number and the massive evidences of open sources like TikTok, which tracked this particular unit has covered 3,500 kilometers on the railroad. Quite impressive as well. Another serious deployment, that's new trend. Russia in April moved their almost entire Caspian flotilla, 15 ships and vessels, from the Caspian Sea up through the Volga River and the Dolga-Don Canal down to the Don River to the Sea of Azov. Length of this sea route is 1,300 kilometers. And please don't be misled by the size of this kind of tiny military vessels. That's a perfect military solution for the shallow Sea of Azov. The draught of these ships is perfect for the operational environment in the area of Mariupol. They have bigger assets, definitely, like Rapucha and Alligator landing ships, and we've been training their marines to accomplish amphibious operations. Perfect military solution for northwest part of Black Sea. So we've been thinking about their courses of action. Let's say from the mid-March, we witnessed major military build-up along the border and in Donbass, in Crimea and some movements even in Transnistria, because they have peacekeeping contingent there, so-called. And the shift was especially visible with tanks and armored vehicles, bringing the number up to almost 5,000. That's very interesting. We had not been seeing anything like this since August 2014, when Russia started open offensive across the border with its irregular units. So, what's the military and political aspects? Definitely, that's the trends of Russian Federation to keep Ukraine in the area of its influence, to find a new tools how to implicate hybrid impact and how to increase and pressure new techniques like access denial options. Very interesting that Russia has announced ban for military vessels of not Russian fleet. I mean military vessels of any other fleets, including NATO countries, to go through the Kerch Strait. And this ban is now until end of October 2021. So why do they do it now? Probably there are few explanations of these activities, and everything is on the table. Let's see what will happen soon. And the answers could be really, really obvious. But the main idea, we have few military options as our priorities. They gathered a massive amount of force around Voronezh with a direct threat for our major city of Kharkiv, with population 1.5 million people, major industrial Eastern Ukraine center, just 25 kilometers from the border, and have incredibly good tank plant there. The Russians wanted badly to get Kharkiv in 2014, but they failed. But they never accepted that as well. My vulnerable direction is Mariupol as an industrial giant and metallurgical plant, the seaport, and the first step to the land bridge to Crimea. And of course, plenty of options with expansion of occupation zone into wider Donbass. So, Donbass, still high presence of Russian troops in the area. There are two army corps, first, second, with 2,100 of Russian militaries in it. Units along the border. The picture shows one of the major locations under Voronezh. This is where a massive deployment is threatening the Ukrainian city I mentioned before, Kharkiv. Chris Brown of CBC had a story from Maslovka recently, so Russians will stay in the field camp as well. Moreover, tanks, armored vehicles, and other heavy equipment will stay until the big drill Zapad 2021. Crimea. Of course, as we speak, Russians continue to turn the Crimean Peninsula into one huge military base, which is supposed to boost Russia's capabilities in the Black Sea and, of course, in the Mediterranean. What do we see new? That's new access denial approach. We have new situation like, first of all, Russians have greatly extended the area they close for military exercises. In general, they close throughout the year approximately 27% of aquatoria. But the pink box on the right side, that's Kerch Strait. And now Kerch Strait will be closed for 6 months for non-Russian Navy. So what is the fuel for the war? We saw huge increase of propaganda, just like in 2014, at the very beginning of the kinetic phase of the conflict with Russia. Our partners from Disinfo, which is a Ukrainian counter-propaganda project founded by UA, see these lines of offensive. And what Russians propaganda say? Maybe some of you have seen this man before. Actually, this is Mr. Kiselov, or radioactive ash man. Kind of nickname, but this guy on March 2014 was showing off that the only Russia can turn US into radioactive ash. And it was on TV channel Russia prime time. Quite impressive. And he considers our country, Ukraine, as a Nazi state. No idea why. Second narrative is that not actually Ukraine preparing an attack on Russia, but NATO, and a lot of cartoons from Soviet past. Some of you definitely remember these good cartoons of the Cold War. The NATO has been described as a death. And what Russian officials say? Statement definitely very obvious, and they all together keep the pace. Defense Minister General Shoigu, Security Council Secretary Patrushev, more or less clear. They describe their point of view. But from my personal background, I can say that I can think evil on a Friday night. But ideas of leader of Russian liberals, then he requested nuke strikes against Ukrainian military bases. That's quite impressive. And this picture is all over Russian media. Half official list of the worst enemies of the Russian Federation. The propaganda machine is telling the Russians that Putin is preparing a harsh response towards these countries. We see the usual suspects, but we were as well a little bit surprised with Australia in this list. But we have friends as well. And we had a phone call with President Biden and President Zelensky. And by the way, State Secretary Biden visited Ukraine yesterday. And visit was good, quite productive. What do we have as well? We have unwavering transatlantic support. That's a very important message for us. UK would consider greater air force and navy involvement in the area. And London moderated the G7 statement, very powerful one, with a good wording for us. NATO support is obvious, and Secretary of NATO, Mr. Stoltenberg, described the position of NATO very clearly. And of course, we expect NATO to start a genuine conversation about membership action plan for Ukraine. We are grateful to Lithuania, which is Canada's close partner through a Quint format. So we might want to talk more about this a little bit later. But in general, we can say that we see a positive response to our MEP initiative across Central and Eastern Europe. Why? Because we feel we know how to be Russia's neighbor. With Canada, we thank Ottawa for Option Unifier and its unwavering support within G7 and Quint. Our defense minister in Iran and Minister of National Defense Haji Sajan spoken twice from the beginning of year. My counterpart in Kyiv, Colonel Rob Foster, with US and UK defense attachés Colonel Britton Stewart and Commander Tim Woods, met with the Minister Turan on April 1st. And their message was diplomatically balanced and sharp as a bayonet. We stand with Ukraine as it defends its sovereignty and territorial integrity. And we're watching the situation in Ukraine closely. Kudos to these gentlemen and ladies. And Crimea. I believe one day I'll come back to Crimea because that's a land I saw a sea for the very first time in my life. We understand that there is a need to elaborate a long-term strategic vision of the deoccupation of Crimea, both at the national level and in the international arena. The ultimate goal of the Crimean platform, our new initiative, supported by our friends, is eventual deoccupation of Crimea and its return to Ukraine by a peaceful means. So now I'm ready to go to our Q&A session.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that overview of the Ukraine-Russian situation. We have a number of questions that have come in. One would be, could you provide an overview of what the security situation in Ukraine is now? How many Russian forces are at the border? And are they really withdrawing as reported by the media?
So, thank you for the question. It's very important for us to deliver our assessment that Minister Shoigu, Minister of Defense of Russia, on April 22nd announced that the beginning of the return is on the way, and that units of Russian Federation are supposed to go back to come back to permanent bases by the 1st May of this year. What do we see? Actually, we redeployed some command and control and HQs. They relocated aircrafts and military transport as well back to permanent airfields and air bases. And looks like we returned combat ships of Black Sea to the bases, but not Baltic and Northern fleets. According to our intelligence, not more than 3,500 troops were deployed from Crimea back to Russia. And even CNN considers that there are not less than 80,000 troops at the border still. According to our foreign minister assessment of yesterday, Mr. Kuleba, that's only microscopic steps Russia is making now to get back troops from the border.
The next question, could you provide an overview of what precipitated this massive Russian buildup that was observed over the past weeks?
I would say that's permanent trend of Russia trying to get back Ukraine in its spheres of influence. Yes, we saw this interview with President Biden and his comments about Mr. Putin, whether or not he's a killer, and the response was obvious. And now we see that the massive deployment on troops was fast and furious. And of course, our armed forces were more and more eager to effectively operate in the area of operation. So that's why Russia considered strengthening Ukraine as a threat. And of course, our Euro-Atlantic ambitions, that's a red flag for Russia, and they're trying to undermine all our efforts. So spring came and the surface was suitable for ground operations. So Russia started this massive buildup on the border with plans how to operate within 3 possible courses of action, as I mentioned before. Whether it could be land bridge to Crimea to get water, or to expand the Donbass, or go back to 2014 plans with big project of Novorossiya. Something like this.
Okay. A question came in. Do you see Canada as being able to contribute anything to improve this situation, which appears to be quite dangerous? Does Canada have any influence to exercise in a constructive fashion?
For sure. As of today, Canada has already contributed in the training of our armed forces units. More than 25,000 troops has been trained by Canadian Armed Forces within Ops Unifier. And as far as I know, after 2022, we anticipate a renewal of Operation Unifier mandate. So I would really appreciate Canadian assistance in technical and material assistance to our armed forces. And of course, we anticipate support of Canada within our Euro-Atlantic integration. We definitely need Ottawa's assistance in MAP plan, and of course, training of our troops. That's priority, because that's exactly Canada who is helping us with training our troops in order to get interoperability with NATO.
This is a technical question. How much of a threat do you see the Russian Kilo-class submarines out in the Crimea?
So we see now 6 subs, and we're operating in the Black Sea, but mainly their focus is so far in Mediterranean, so along the Syria and in further areas. So Killer-class submarines, that's, of course, possible platforms for their caliber missiles. And definitely, then these killer-class submarines will be in western part of the area, I mean Black Sea. It will be great threat for our seaports, Odessa, Ilyichovsk, and our neighbors like Bulgaria and Romania. And Georgia, still our good friend with same Euro-Atlantic ambitions. We remember what's happened 10 years ago, maybe less, with Georgia and Russian invasion into northern Georgia, and definitely killer-class submarines as well as other assets. That's a tool how to block Euro-Atlantic aspirations, both Ukraine and Georgia.
This is more of a political question in relation to the status of the NATO-Ukraine Commission and Ukraine's current level of involvement in the NATO Membership Action Plan. What is the status?
Actually, doors of NATO still opened to Ukraine since 2008, and we are now a member of NATO EOP program. That's great for us, but nevertheless, MAP, that's priority. We don't have NATO-Ukraine Commission meetings because of the positions of some NATO countries. Especially we have some situation with our neighbor, Hungary, and we are doing our best to improve our relations between Kyiv and Budapest in order to boost these meetings and to have good level of communication within NATO Commission and the upcoming NATO mission in summer 2021.
You alluded in the slides some recent initiatives by the Russian forces, especially in the massive reinforcement by Russia to the Crimea Peninsula from various regions of Russia. Could you possibly shed some more light on this?
Oh, yes. Just have a look. Crimea is a big fortress now. It's an inflatable porte-avions. So they develop both defense and strike capabilities. But the most essential for them, that's to develop access denial. So today they blocked Kerch Strait for our military vessels. Tomorrow it could be western part of the Black Sea, rich in oil and gas, by the way. And what could be next? Different areas like Arctic. So they're training their troops and they improve their techniques how to implement access denial approaches.
Could you explain Russia's modus operandi and what is the role of Belarus?
Thank you for the question. That's, by the way, a few slides regarding your previous question. That's their land capabilities. Next one will be air, quite impressive one, and of course, Navy. Belarus. That's a very important neighbor and ally of Moscow in the region. And through last 10 years, we saw some resistance from President of Belarus, Lukashenko, taking into consideration some his personal views on bilateral relations between Moscow and Minsk. And he was quite resistant to Russian plans to expand the influence of Russia. But recent events, I mean last year, they completely changed his attitude. And Mr. Lukashenko finally let the Russians to go ahead with establishing a temporary military air presence, but in this sentence it means the long-time presence, complete one. And it creates much more dangerous threats for Baltic states and of course for Central Europe. We see upgrade of Russian air activities in the European skies, and they're especially focused on the Baltic Sea region. So we won't see a lot of kinetic actions because looks like if Russians fighter jets already deployed to Belarus, it means they there for a serious time, very serious in their intentions.
Next question. While Russia continues to undertake operations in and around Ukraine and the Crimea, could you update us as to what they are?
Operations are the same. That's like everyday shelling. That's they're trying to engage soldiers, officers, men and women in uniform on our side every day. Why? just to destabilize Ukraine with thousands of casualties and to press the political leadership of our country. So we have incredible military presence along the border. We have built up in Crimea. They have a Transnistria, and they have hybrid tools they're using against us. So military operations, that's big question for us now, whether we will dare to start it. At the same time, we understand that's good support of our friends and allies from NATO. That's the main barrier for them to make the first step.
And it's something relating to the high Arctic. Do you have any insights on recent Russian military exercises and operations in the Arctic?
Yes, for sure. I like this picture. That's 3 Russian boomers in high Arctic. And I would say that's quite impressive. One, because from time to time, we've been conducting operations with 1 or 2 nuclear subs, but in this case, on March 26th, 3 of them all together on the ice. That's, I would say, real and serious demonstration of their intentions and capabilities. Another picture that's a good runaway on the Alexandra Land Island. Civilian air jets on the picture, but I would say the strategic bombers can use this airfield as well. And that's good witnesses of Russian intentions. I like Arctic because it's always interesting to monitor what is going on there. And I was impressed about the level and quantities of their amphibious training, landings training in the Arctic. And even CNN was impressed with unprecedented military might, with all their pre-deployment, all these bases along the Northern Sea route, and with their new tools like missiles. That's it about Arctic, Paul. Maybe you have some more?
Can you comment on the Gerasimov doctrine?
Gerasimov doctrine is almost complete. So let's say we've conducted numerous operations against Ukraine, and the idea was to implement the last step, to change their leadership in countries. For instance, we've been trying to influence our national elections to get pro-Russian candidate. And I cannot confirm that it was a successful option for them. Our Ukrainian leadership now, President and his administration, are doing their best in order to keep the pace of movement towards the West with our implementation of Euro-Atlantic aspiration, both through EOP, through MAP, and for internal reforms. And I would say that strong Ukraine, that's a great explanation how to counteract implementation of Russia's doctrine of Mr. Gerasimov.
Another question, considering the concentration of Russian ground forces recently along the borders, has there been anything unusual, or for that matter, new and operational or in logistical terms during this period of buildup?
Great question. Thank you very much. We saw huge build-up and different assets. Battle tanks, main battle tanks transferred from different parts of Russia, even Siberia. We saw them with tubes for water crossing. It was actually a new trend for us. And this particular slide gives us understanding what's happened on April 23rd, 24th, because Russians were intercepted and jammed the Global Hawk 4-12. And let's say throughout 3 weeks, these drones have been successfully monitoring situation along the contact line and around Crimea. But let's say this event was happened on April 24th, something which we do not often see happening. And it was done in a very demonstrative manner because 4-12 was about 20-25 kilometers to the Russian border. So we demonstrated that their access denial technique with electronic warfare system are quite capable. And additional unusual situation that's happened on the same day, Russian Northern Fleet has been sent out of bases to the high Arctic. Colombian Air Force, fighter jet Kyiv intercepted Russian aircraft Ilyushin 196-400 VPU. That's let's say airborne command post belonging to Federal Security Service of Russia. And this aircraft was flying from Moscow to Nicaragua, Managua airfield. So let's finalize. The same day, Russian Northern Fleet has left Navy bases for massive exercise in Arctic. It could be scheduled or could be strategic redeployment. Russian Ilyushin flies to Central America. I wouldn't say that that's coincidence. And just yesterday, another Russian Ilyushin has violated airspace of a member of NATO, Estonia. And we see it as a general trend. So unusual. Unusual that's to see Rusos en la jungle. For instance, it's some conflict on the border between Venezuela and Colombia. And on this slide, there are indications about some presence of Russians, if it's confirmed, of course. But I would say that's definitely their assessment of US intelligence, that in this year, incredible movement of refugees could happen, and we will go up north from Central America. So that's unusual trends.
Another question came in. What new technologies have been fielded by the Russian forces during this 7-year conflict?
Thank you for the question. And I would say that's informational influence. That's propaganda. For instance, in this picture, we see new stuff in Crimea. That's their intention to show that they absolutely control the situation, and that's the meeting of the Defense Minister of Russian Federation, General Gerasimov, Chief Defense Staff, and Commander of Southern Military Districts. So have a look at the map. Very nice angle, very, very good light, and nice picture. So what this CF's technologies, different technologies. So it's, by the way, our Salisbury guys who were trying to undermine implementation of Ukrainian contracts to get the armor, and technologies again. The most unusual, that's the thing I saw in 2018. So we've been using against our snipers a very interesting equipment, devices. So we've been blinding our observers and snipers with laser beams. So can you imagine a situation when you have sniper in positions, and while they're watching through a sniper scope, they receive high intensity laser beam in their eye. And we lost few eyes of our snipers. It means casualties were quite serious, because that's created psychological effect. Our snipers, our observers, we've been very careful while observing the enemy's lines. So any optical device could be the target of this equipment. And of course, they've been using different electronic warfare equipment, absolutely different tools to provide their troops with access denial options. And of course, different UAVs, tactical level and operational level. So this equipment is used widely by Russian Federation, both on the front line and in temporal and controlled territories of Donbass. That's about equipment and technologies.
Have you had any indications of private military companies operating on the Ukrainian front?
We saw numerous facts about Wagner, and on YouTube a lot of videos about Debaltsevo. The incredible and very serious combats, level of combats was so serious that it the Russians, they've been training their mercenaries in the area for future conflicts. So they trained Wagner's units, and then these guys are now have been deployed to Syria, to Africa, and probably to different regions as well. And of course, we understand that not only one Wagner group has been participating in conflict in Donbass. So we're still monitoring their activities and how do they accomplish their mission.
Oh, there's another question that came in. Would it be possible to comment on the effectiveness of Russia's military, and in particular, how effective is their leadership?
Boom. Leadership. I would say that this picture quite informative regarding effectiveness of leadership, and I would say that Mr. Putin is a very long runner. So he has been at power very long time, and as you see, he has been working with numerous world leaders and of course with US presidents. They are effective leaders, and Mr. Putin's favorite form is многоходовочка, or complicated political combination. And I would say military chain of command, very effective because they participate in numerous conflicts and they run few campaigns, not only in Ukraine. Have a look, they're quite effective in Syria. They have military presence even in Central Africa. So I recall the events of Soviet times. Then the Soviet troops has been spread throughout the world, from Southern America and Cuba to the Middle East countries. So let's be realistic. Russian leadership is quite effective, and they demand attention. They demand respective attitude to them.
Are you concerned that Russia will use concrete steps to admit Ukraine into NATO as a pretext to increase pressure or move major forces into eastern Ukraine?
Let's say that Russian dream is to bring back Ukraine to the mother Russia. That's interesting. Let me go back a few slides and I'll show you one good indication of Russian intentions. Actually, we understand that Russia considers Ukraine as a part of big Russian culture, ancient Russian culture and destiny. They say that Moscow is the third Rome, but there is another version of the same phrase. Kyiv, мать городов русских. Kyiv is the mother of Russian cities. Our capital, Kyiv, actually, that's the cradle of Russian history and culture, and the origin of Russian church and faith. So it's why President Putin is desperately trying to bring back Ukraine to Russia by any means. We understand his ambitions. We understand that he is on the top of pyramid of Mr. Maslow, but there is very interesting comment from Forrest Gump. You saw this movie definitely, that life is like a box of chocolate and you never know what you want to get.
Next question, considering the current situation at the border, how likely would an escalation of force ending in an armed conflict be between Ukraine and Russia?
I would say that everything depends on the resilience of Ukraine and the support of our friends and allies. Weak Ukraine, that's a great solution for Russians to make this step front and to dictate world next ambitions. Strong Ukraine, that's a regional partner, reliable one, with good defense assets, good defense capabilities, and believe me, we will be on the front line providing you additional time to deploy additional defense capabilities in the case of conflict. Let's think about their intentions. Can they do this assault? Can they jump in Ukraine to go to the source of water for Crimea? Yes, they can do it. Will they do it? That's a big question, because there are a lot of defense lines of Ukrainian armed forces. There are a lot of towns and villages, and that would be definitely bloodbath for them. So we have to think twice before come into Ukraine, because our armed forces, that's not armed forces of 2014. We've improved them. We have additional equipment, we have assets, and we have well-motivated troops who know how to defend themselves.
Canada has been training the Ukrainian forces for quite some time. How many other countries have dedicated resources to the training of Ukraine military?
Well, we appreciate assistance of GMTGU and United States, of course. We have great mission Orbital, British one, and we have assistance from our Queen partners like Poland, Lithuania. So since 2014, almost all the European countries have been helping us to develop our defense capabilities. But as I said before, United States, United Kingdom, Canada, our neighbors Lithuania, Poland, and other friends of Ukraine are helping us to counteract Russian aggressions.
Another question is obviously an academic one. What countries have been key in assisting Ukraine in this conflict with Russia?
Just a great question, and I have to repeat that, of course, United States, of course, Canada, United Kingdom, and all the friendly countries from our region, from Eastern Europe. We have great connection with our neighbors in Black Sea region, Bulgaria, Romania. We have great interaction with Turkey. And I would say locomotive on our success, that's definitely UK and Canada. US helping us with military assistance, and idea of transatlantic trio, it's a great contributor to defense of Ukraine and to effectiveness of our deterrence of Russia. So one more time, Washington, Ottawa, and London, UK.
Well, thank you. Last question, from an operational point of view, what is Ukrainian priority now?
Ukrainian priority now, that's a future. That's a future which is safe and secure, both for our country and for our region. And of course, Crimea, we looking forward, Crimea going back to home, back to Ukraine. Arctic, there's a very sensitive area, and I would say that priorities for us was to be interoperable with NATO. And thanks to Canada for supporting us, expanding their support of our country. We need defense weapon to protect ourselves, and Ukrainian Canadian Congress has used this phrase in describing how it's better to help us to protect Ukraine, especially in so sensitive areas like Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. We need information, because if we know information, if we know what is going on at the border and a little bit behind the border, it improves our international informational awareness. So our priority, crucial priority, vital one, that's a membership action plan to NATO, because we are doing our best within all these military exercises, and task number one, that's to develop our own defense capabilities in order to represent modern democratic world on the front line. Priority was for our presidents, actually Financial Times just described his position that we would like to expand Normandy Group, but taking into consideration yesterday's visit of Foreign State Secretary of United States, US probably will appoint new special representative to Ukraine, as Minister Kurt Volker has been working previously. So priority, again, we are in very tough situation now, but definitely we'll go through. And what will be then? Ukraine is now at the front line because we have Russians at their border. But in the same time, Russians are very close to democratic institutions. For instance, cyber incident with SolarWinds supply chain demonstrated they penetrated very sensitive and secure areas in United States and different countries in the world. So I would like to go back to long telegram of US diplomat George Kennan when he described in 1946 the ways and vectors of penetration. So let's have a look at this slide, and I would show you my last command, which will be final comments of this presentation, that Russia could be very influential. Russia can move to different areas in order to penetrate democratic world. And Russia withdraws when strong resistance is encountered at any point. And we can negotiate altogether how to move forward afterwards.
All right, thank you. Well, on behalf of Policy Insights Forum and Samuel Associates, I'd like to thank our special guest speaker, Colonel Viktor Surmaka, for an interesting and informative insight into the ongoing aggressive Russian military activities in and around Ukraine and elsewhere. I would also like to thank our audience in Canada, the United States, and Europe. Thank you for participating in our Strategic Perspective series. For more information about our upcoming events, please see us at www.policyinsights.ca. Our next event is on Wednesday, May 12th, and we'll discuss agile procurement and cyberspace. We look forward to seeing you again, and thank you again.